The Chief Executive, Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority, NMDPRA, Farouk Ahmed, said the diesel the refinery produces is inferior to the one imported into the country, and that diesel from the Dangote refinery contains a high sulfur content of between 650,000 ppm, making it substandard, 650,000 to over 1,000 parts per million. Joining us this morning to look at this conversation is Economist Gbolahan Olojede, who will be joined much later by a climate science professor at Rivers State University as well. Good morning, Mr. Olojede. Thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, good morning. Nice to be on the program.
All right. Before we get into the conversation, let's listen to what Mr. Aliko Dangote has to say about this.
Our quality was about 600 to 650 ppm, and the 600 to 650 ppm is one of the best in terms of quality, okay, at that time when we started. But as of today, we are 87 ppm, and I assure you, media, you can come again and take sample on Monday. By Monday, latest Tuesday, will be at 50 ppm. By beginning of August, will be at 10 ppm. So in terms of quality, we are doing very, very well. Nobody can produce anything better than us.
Well, you heard him. In contrary to the allegations about his product being substandard, he has said that by today, Monday, they'll be able to guarantee 50 ppm, and then by the 1st of August, it will be up to 10 ppm. Mr. Gbolahan Olojede, it would seem that the travails of Aliko Dangote have been quite a lot in the past few weeks. He's been speaking more to media, to journalists, and sharing a lot of the hurdles that he has been through. It is beginning to look somewhat political. The CEO of NMDPRA has also faced backlash from Nigerians who says that he is demarketing the product as opposed to being some form of a protection or a covering to Aliko Dangote, who is stepping in to, fill in the gap where the NNPC may have failed. So would you say now this is something that there is some element of truth in, or has it somewhat become political?
I think it's largely political, and it's also hugely shameful that this is where we have found ourselves. When you look at some of those statements, I think they should have been resolved at a different level. Not coming into the media, come and say some of those. For example, last year, more than a year ago, actually, the refinery was commissioned by the former president. So if 14 months after, it is still 45%. So what percentage was it 14 months ago when the former president commissioned? Is it an unlicensed refineries? Because in recent times, in the last few months, we've seen the federal government itself partnering, having discussion with Dangote for diesel prices. And we've heard all sorts of statements, even from government quarter, about the Dangote refineries. Does it mean that all those things were not real? Were they just fabricated? If a refinery has been putting diesel in the market, and then you hear a comment like, oh, the diesel is not good, we prefer the imported one. So what is the essence of this project then, if the imported one has a higher quality? What the agency should do is to work with Dangote to achieve the level of quality that it desires, not to have a preference for the imported one. But it seems as if there's a love for the imported ones. And that is the kind of statement that we're hearing. I just hope that the number one person on whose desk this all stopped will look at this matter, will intervene, we get into that space and have this resolved. We're talking of a $20 billion project, right? Nigeria has been a country that has been exporting commodities, crude, for years. We've been importing this refined product. We're at a point where we can flip this, and we are beginning to speak from both sides of our mouth. It is disgraceful. when you talk of monopoly, the same government has been saying that the 4 refineries of the government will start to work. If these refineries are working, we are told that Port Harcourt has been completed mechanically since the beginning of this year, or since the first quarter of this year. So if the 2 refineries in Port Harcourt are producing, they told us Warri will start producing. Kaduna has been awarded for revamp. So how is it a monopoly then? If 425,000 barrels of
hold on, Mr. Olojede.
Right.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask a follow-up question to what you've said. You did say that you're hoping that the person on whose table this should be resolved, steps in quickly. Who, by this person, who do you mean? Do you mean the president, or are you talking about the Minister of State for, Petroleum Resources, Heineken Lukobiri? Who do you mean when you say that the person whose table this should land on should resolve this?
It's the president.
Great.
Just
wanted to quickly clarify that.
A project of this size, although it was essentially said to be private, how much money, in one way or the other, how much commitment, how much effort has Nigeria as a country put into that project?
All right.
Why should we now go to the last stage, and instead of working closely, of course, there's a regulator. Do your work as a regulator. Don't let bad quality fuel get into the market. But please and please support that project rather than having a preference for imported quality.
Yeah. All right.
We've been importing since 1972. Please.
All right, Mr. Olojede. We also have joining us this morning climate science professor at the River State University, Precious Ede. Good morning, and thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Great to have you join us. Let's also get your thoughts, on whether, this is politics being played out, or the head of the NMDPRA does have genuine concerns about the quality of diesel and sulfur in the diesel produced by the Dangote refineries. I know that they did carry out a quick survey over the weekend, and it showed that the Dangote diesel might actually be the best quality that that is being delivered across the country. But what are your thoughts?
Yes, before I was invited to speak, Dangote was featured on your news saying that by today, the level of sulfur in his diesel will have come down to about 50 parts per million, and that by August it will be down to 10 parts per million, and that as far as he's concerned, he produces the best diesel in West Africa. There's nothing, it may be true. The thing is this: why will regulators stand aside and allow regulators, being present, or even regulators carrying out their own sample? Does it then mean that a certain or this thing that after a week ago that it was true? It is a question nobody has answered, and we need to know that. And we also need to know that the products we are expecting from Dangote Refinery will have consistent.
All right. Professor, it seems your network isn't the best at this point. While we try to reconnect, let's go back to Gbolahan Olojede. Mr. Olojede, let's bring you back in, and I now want to ask, about, certain decisions that Dangote himself, made in setting up, the refinery, and the conversation about a monopoly. I think the idea behind, or the claims, that he's, benefiting from a monopoly is not just because of the refinery. It might also be because of previous businesses and the idea that he has always been, government special child and has always benefited from government support for many, many years through his cement business, his sugar business, and any other, businesses he's invested in. And so does anybody have a point, there if they say that he has genuinely benefited from a monopoly in the last long while, not just because of the refinery?
But maybe we should be talking of some sort of oligopoly and not a monopoly. In the cement space, is Dangote the only manufacturer in Nigeria? There is Lafarge, there is Bua, and you need to check out the capacity of these manufacturers. There are other smaller ones, but I just mentioned those two big other ones, Bua and Lafarge. They are there. In fact, Lafarge was in this market before that. So when Lafarge was the only guy that was there, how come the accusation about monopoly was not the other? If you come to sugar, there are 5 businesses that I'm aware of. Bua is in sugar, Flour Mill is in sugar, and there are a couple of others are also in sugar. So how is it a monopoly? So in the real sense, the regulators should do their work. Where there are issues around monopoly, it is not to say, oh, investors, stop investing because we know you are a monopoly. No, you go and let the regulators rise up and do their work as far as ensuring that people are not being used by virtue of monopolies. But like I've given examples, even in the specific ones you mentioned, are they monopolies? If there are 2, 3, 4 other big players in those same space.
All right. The CEO of NMDPRA, I don't know if Mr. Precious Ede is here with us.
Professor, I am here with you.
Okay, Professor, thank you very much for joining us. We did have some challenges regarding your network. We're hoping that we can have you react to the first question as to whether or not there's some sense to the argument of the CEO of NMDPRA or if it is politicized. Also, in addition to that, part of the statements or the responses that Dangote had for the NMDPRA was that they should show their laboratory where they have done this testing. For example, he showed his own testing laboratory where this product was gotten hot, fresh from refining or fresh from the source, and it was being tested right there. So he has asked that they show their laboratory. So talk to us about the validity of the claims of the NMDPRA. Is that also a defense? Dangote has talked about laboratories. Do we know of their testing facilities? That is the regulatory agency in this case.
I think the regulatory agencies have a standard laboratory. I'm aware of it because I have used it in the past. Maybe not in the recent past, but they do have. And even if they don't, there are independent laboratories across Nigeria that can test for sulfur in petrol. That's not a very advanced science. But concerning the controversy, I think the Nigerians, the average Nigerian like you and I, are the ones bearing the brunt of this intrigue and controversy that is going on between Dangote and the Nigerian Midstream and the Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority. There should be a truce. Like the previous speaker said, the Petroleum Minister and President of Nigeria should step in and call everybody to order. What Nigeria needs is to be able to, drive into a filling station, buy gasoline or diesel, and drive away. Later we can talk about the price. As at now, that is not happening. And this controversy is an unnecessary distraction. It's an unnecessary distraction because, like it has also been pointed out, how about those refineries controlled by government? Have they been able to deliver? They've not been able to deliver. We were all banking on Port Harcourt refinery producing since first quarter of this year, and they've not been able to start anything. And the latest news we are getting is that they will start by August. So Nigerians should be given an opportunity to live normally, ordinarily, like citizens of other places in the world.
Yeah. All right. Gbolahan Olojede, let's bring you back again. Initially, all the controversy started with, seeming complaints by Dangote and his group of not being able to get adequate crude oil supply from the NNPC and, initial arrangement that they had. So tell us, about that aspect as well. And, maybe that's also one of the reasons why people say that might be politics being played here. The NNPC not with its 20% stake initial agreement and other things. Why is Dangote struggling to get crude?
It is struggling to get crude simply because government has not made the crude available under what might have been an agreement. The so-called, the 20% stake, I think part of it were probably supposed to be paid up in crude, but the crude is not available. Don't forget that we've not even been able to make our target, neither the OPEC target, not to talk of our budget target for crude production. So if we don't produce at that level, we are supposed to produce. And the little we produce, we have pledged it in certain swaps and other deals. The question is, where would the crude be? That is number one. Number two, it is to also, which is why it is important that the president himself step in that meeting. See, the politics of all of this is there. The deals, who want to be caught in, who wants to be out of the deal, who should be brought in, are also there. What is important for Nigeria is that let the fuel be available. All the promises that this refinery held, let it be delivered to the people. Well, all those other things, Mr. President can step in there and they can resolve it behind it. But let's be able to let that refinery work. Let's be able to earn foreign exchange by exporting refined products. Let's be able to stop all that importation and consuming our hard-earned foreign exchange in importing white products. If we solve that, if we let that be at the forefront of this decision-making process, it will be better for us as a country. The rest of the stories are politics and deals matter. Yeah.
I want to, you know, now you're talking about crude, you know, there's meant to be, I mean, isn't it regular practice that there's meant to be an offtake agreement signed many years even before the completion of the, you know, refinery for every person who's going to be getting into this business? And does this mean that Dangote didn't have an offtake agreement? He didn't have any agreement, you know, based on who was going to be supplying him crude when the refinery was completed? And that's one of the reasons he's getting into this mess.
It would have been a disaster if he didn't get a contract like that in place. It's also possible that it was probably relying on some gentleman agreement. Gentleman agreement can fail. Whatever the case is, we are now at this juncture. I mean, let me also add the third part, which is there are people who said, look, the $2.7 billion, Nigeria paid only $1 billion, and the rest were meant to be in supply of food. If that is part of it, I've never seen the papers, and that's the deal. So I can't be categorical about what was in that agreement that they had for the share purchase. But if that was part of the deal, then apparently he had a basis to have relied on $1.7 billion worth of that will be coming to him. However, let's even say for whatever, it will be a very big blunder. And the crude agreement was not signed. We can still work this out. We're a crude nation. We are, oh my God.
All right, Mr. Gbolahan, Olojede, and Professor Precious, thank you so much for joining us. There are other angles to look at. We hope we can have you both join us much later, maybe looking at his refusal to invest in steel going forward because he doesn't want to be accused of monopoly. I'm sure that when we have Prof again, he would have some climate perspectives to give us regarding that conversation. But thank you so much, gentlemen.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much.
All right.